Part B, because my air conditioner just blew my breakers, and the show
I love it when a plan comes together.
The show, yeah, the show just died a slow death. Me offline, and finally everything came together, and I'm chatting to everybody. I'm like, "Is it still online?" And Mike's like, "Vince has got this handled." And then about a minute later, yeah, we went off the air. So, sorry about that.
What I said was true for a short period.
I know it was. So those watching the show right now, this won't help you when I say this to refresh the webpage so that you can get back into the movie or back into the show. So I guess we should announce that in the live chat room.
Looks like some guys in the chat room are saying that it's back.
Okay, so it just worked, hopefully.
It worked, yes.
Good.
Hey, Leonard, before I go any further with the awesomeness that is you, I want to bring up something that I think is the greatest thing ever from Canada. Slow turn, Labatt 50 cream ale.
Nice.
I love that beer.
Yeah, that's interesting because like Labatt's is a huge brewery, so it's good that you like it because you can probably get it almost anywhere.
Not in America.
There you go. Well, I'll have to figure out how to ship you down a case or something.
Oh, this show is usually brought to us by some sort of whiskey, but I decided today to try out Vince's Dragon's Milk beer. Bourbon barrel-aged stout. Thank you, Vince, for leaving this. This is rather good, and I'm not a big...
I was thinking that you would like it. I mean, you're not a beer drinker, but I figured that it would have a nice sort of a boozy head that you would like.
It's got like an oatmeal to it that I really like. It's a really nice... It's not heavy on the tongue. It's really, really, really good. Thank you.
As long as we're in the mood for endorsing products, this might not be a bad juncture for giving some love to our sponsors.
Yes. Thank you, Isotope, for supporting the show. And I'm going to see some Isotope people at AES this week. I'm pretty excited to make some connections. But Isotope's been sponsoring us for some time now and letting us give away some awesome software and taking care of us. They got some stuff on the hook, I think. You guys have been watching their web pages, some new things coming out, and I'm pretty excited about where they're going. So keep your eye on the Isotope webpage and keep your eye here for another giveaway next month, right? I think we did this one, right? September?
Yeah. So it's going to be I guess next week we should get something going.
We should do it. We should do it.
Excited.
October gets really busy, you know? It's crazy.
It does.
Weekends are filled up in October.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Isotope, for supporting the show very much. And now back to your previously scheduled program. Vince, I don't know where you left off, so I'm going to let you pick it up where you dropped it.
Well, we were looking at Leonard's PD patch that basically created the track Buckwheat Pancakes, which we were listening to for a few minutes. And it's a really cool track, and it seemed like a really interesting PD patch, and I was hoping to
wait a minute.
See if we could get some navigation through that.
Did my power outage step on Leonard's song?
Well,
I'm so sorry, man. I kind of hate it when I play music for somebody and they talk the whole time. This is worse. I just shut down the whole stream accidentally. I am very sorry.
The Buckwheat Pancakes got stuck.
No, I'm sorry, man.
No worries. Let's see here.
Well, let's start from a high level. Why is that called Buckwheat Pancakes?
Yeah, well, that's a good question because basically all I found. Okay, let me rewind. When working on the Beep score, I went through all sorts of different iterations on things I wanted to try. So I was thinking I would do sort of like a hybrid, chiptune type thing where it's like, oh, we're like talking about the Atari 2600. I'll learn how to do chiptune on the 2600 and then all the way through. But oddly enough, it took me about like 3 years to figure out how to like do proper chiptune for just the NES for Retro City Rampage. So then I found out that it's I wanted to do it properly, and it was also difficult to fit behind the dialogue too. So even trying to do ambient stuff, it's just the chip stuff. It's just got a lot of edge to it unless you really filter it down. So then I thought, well, why not try and rewind it back to when I was a kid and like playing video games and what music, was sort of happening, like electronic music was happening at that time, that composers sort of the golden age of like game audio, what they would be listening to. So I just thought that, yeah, like going back to kind of like modular synth kind of stuff would be a good approach. And so Karen Collins and I sort of, narrowed in on a few different sort of genres and stuff. And so we sort of arrived at that. And then as far as the buckwheat pancakes, that comes from my own background of being a kid where my mom one time she basically had she wanted to try out different foods and stuff like this. She was like really wanting to be super healthy, and so she decided to make buckwheat pancakes, but like just buckwheat. And the thing is that you've probably never had just buckwheat, and there's a reason why they don't do that. Anyways, I had a friend of mine over, Dave, and yeah, we ate like pure buckwheat pancakes, and it was like not really a good thing. So anyways, it was just sort of a funny thing that like when I was playing the song and I was thinking of different things, it just came, I was just like, oh yeah, buckwheat pancakes. That reminds me of being a kid and like sitting down and like, trying to down these pancakes and not, be, I don't know, whatever, still have my friend come back in the future. Yeah, that's where that song name comes from.
That's great. Although I gotta admit that track is great to listen to. It's really, it's got. There's a lot of interesting movement happening all over the place, and it's also really smooth. And I can totally see how this fits really nicely into that documentary context. And I totally get what you mean about, oh yeah, the NES chip, like that VRC chip, or the Atari Pokey. I would be scared if someone asked me, hey, can you use the Pokey for underscore in a film? I'm like, no way. So,
and that's one of the songs. Only one song though is a Atari 2600 song. So what I did is, because the Atari 2600, it only had 5 bits, right, for the pitch. So, and they were not like, it's not equitempered either. So you basically had 32 different tones that were not related to any sort of scale. And so the track that's called Dave's Atari, who's actually the Dave from when I was eating the pancakes with. So he ended up still being my friend, but he had an Atari 2600 and I didn't. And so I would always go to Dave's place to like play the 2600 and play Pitfall and stuff like that. So anyways, that song is named after him, and that song only uses, because it only had 2 channels. So the one channel was sort of the noise channel, and that's the drums and stuff. And then the other one was the 32 channels. But I decided not to actually try and do that on the 2600. I just used those frequencies, and then I made a table, and then I put that into pure data. So yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. Do you mind if we play some of that?
Yeah.
Oh, do you mind if we play some of that right now?
I'll try and pull up the patch and see if I can go to like share screen mode and all that too. So yeah, definitely. It's called Dave's Atari.
All right, here we go.
That's the hum of the Atari. So yeah, you get the idea.
I remember being really creeped out by that when I was listening to the album earlier today. That one made me kind of put down my Doritos and go, what is going on here?
That's
So
great.
your explanation about the scale helps make sense of why there's something disturbing intrinsically about that track.
Yes. Yeah,
Wow.
totally. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, is my audio still coming through? Or?
It is, yeah.
Okay. So if I show the screen, can we see the Dave's Atari?
I'm going
patch?
full screen on it.
Okay, I'll go full screen and go boop. Uh-oh.
Oh, no,
it's
you're
not
fine.
working.
I've already done it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, okay, great. And so you can see the pointer too?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so this is the patch, and then all the tones are here. that I sort of composed, and then you can see that I just decided to go through all the different pitches that are there. And I think if I look through the Atari base, see, I programmed in the pitches there. So if I open it up, whoopsies, if I open, I guess that screen's not probably showing, right?
I don't see anything but the main screen.
Yeah, okay, here, let's see if I could go back to this one and go share screen and then go, how do I do this? Entire screen and then go share. And then that should hopefully...
There you go.
Okay, great, yeah. And then if I open this guy here, and then I do properties. Cool, so that one's showing up? Yeah, so if I open list view, those are actually the pitches. Of the Atari 2600, all 32 of them. So it goes from 0, the high tone there, all the way down to the low tone. And yeah, I mean,
the low tone's only 478, huh?
Yeah, and that's it.
That's really cool. Because that's probably because the speaker couldn't handle anything below that.
Yeah. Oh, there's some other notes in here. I think I combined those two together. Sorry, so that it had two. Okay, maybe I cheated here a little bit. So it goes down, those are the 16, and then I wanted to go in a different scale. I think there is a way of shifting that. Anyways,
I got you.
There's only 32 notes, one way or another.
Gotcha.
Tones. Yeah.
I'm thinking back to certain Atari games like Pitfall and how the little musical phrases were all slightly off kilter. Like everything was kind of almost atonal. And this really all makes sense retroactively. So
that's how long did it take you to make that patch?
Oh, well, that one, it's actually, it took me a long time because if I go back to what I was working, that was my 18th version. A lot of it is just because it's hard to get anything that sounds interesting out of those 32 pitches without sort of trying to cram in something like an existing piece of music that I would pre-compose. So I actually composed that specifically for the 2600. So I found that either it was like super creepy, but I wanted it to be like creepy but funny creepy. So that sort of fine line took me, I don't know, probably a couple days to sort of to figure out like, oh, if you sort of go up and down the scale, it's sort of, the scale, it's just sort of, it produces like a little bit of a carnival kind of feeling, just with that sort of swing and sort of,
That's so cool.
How much variation is there between separate performances of this piece, given that you have a lot of randomness and kind of stochastic algorithmic stuff going on?
Yeah, this one, it's not too much because what I did is I sort of figured out what I liked. And then I think when it was really random, it didn't sound funny. So then I constrained it more and more. And so it's more of a bit of a back and forth process with like, oh, that's an area of randomness that I like, and that's sort of one that I don't like so much. So I'd sort of like snip off the parts that I didn't like. What I'm thinking of doing is doing like a little remix competition, and I'm thinking of basically outputting just the MIDI of some of the patches and then seeing what people come up with, like maybe driving their own synthesizers or something like that. And then that way I'll re-render out the score multiple times, and then people can hear the different sort of performances. When working like to put the soundtrack out on Bandcamp, it was actually kind of difficult because some of the performances I just didn't like. So it'd be like start patch, start patch. It's kind of like, like you're trying to sort of guide your musicians into a manner in which you're sort of like, yeah, that's groovy. Keep it, stick with that. Awesome. So it actually takes a long time to sort of program like procedurally, like that kind of stuff. Even when you've got sort of like your bass notes. So a lot of my general structures are where it would be my pre-composed notes, and then it would sort of morph more so into different scenes and mixes where it's just sort of more random, and then it would constrain again. Because you really, at least I really like stuff that it feels intentional, but then when I was working with it, I also wanted to have a lot of flexibility, like a lot of serendipity from the system as well. So, yeah.
That's a great way to put it for procedural audio, especially as serendipity. That's the beautiful part of it, in my opinion, is trying to find that.
Are there any interesting distinctions between the score as it's heard in the film and what you released on Bandcamp?
Yeah, it's actually pretty massive because the film, I needed to get it all done in January. But when I was doing that, I was more hands-on, so I didn't actually, like, I was performing stuff live, so I had my patch and then like the mix and the way that it would step through either the mix sequences or sort of the different presets and stuff like that for the music, the different patterns. I was sort of more like, I would have a little bit of randomness, but more so I was guiding that high level process. So I'd be like, okay, and ready for the drop. And then I could actually like, hit the drop button. Whereas with the soundtrack or the original score stuff that's out on Bandcamp, that is all hands off. So the only thing that I did was master things a little bit. So I ran it through this really nice Neotech channel strip. And so I went out analog just to sort of, get rid of some of the edges and stuff. And then I'm hoping if everything works out well that I can press the vinyl. So I also like rendered it out at 9624 as well. So I just sort of added a little bit of like, analog niceness to it just to make it a little bit smoother. But yeah, all of the tracks are like, I just press play and it does its thing. And then eventually it, sometimes I, manually fade it out, but that's it. So that's how it's, yeah.
There's an interesting question that arises, given that there's this kind of crazy randomness that you can, to certain degrees, constrain. When you're approaching a very traditional linear medium like a film score, I'm curious if there was ever an occasion where, like, the director said, I love this cue, but can you make such and such a change? And you had to say, well, I can, but some of the things you like may not be there on the next take because they were the result of this algorithm doing its thing, and we can't entirely be sure we can recreate that.
Yeah, that is a problem. What say for the film, what I did is I would render out, say, those pieces. They're sort of like around 3 to 4 minute pieces, so they play well within that length of time, and some of them actually play well longer. So I would render out, say, like 10 minutes or even more for Karen, and then she would go in there and then cut parts apart and then do basically music editing with that. So then it's sort of like, it's like growing a tree, and then you sort of harvest it, and then she did what she needed to with it. And then, but within sort of the seed that I could create more permutations if I wanted to. So yeah, I found that was more of an issue when because I worked so much with that music that there was things that it would do and then it would never do them again. And
no, that's
so yeah. So when working on stuff, like when you're in the zone and it's just like, it just doesn't click. It doesn't sound quite right. Yeah, that's with procedural audio. That's even worse because you're like, is it just like, like, am I like not in the sweet spot in the room? Did I eat something different today? Or is it just, like really the electricity that's creating a whole bunch of different, sounds or something like that? And yeah, you never know. I actually, when I first rendered it out, I did it at 96K thinking like, oh, it'll be all better. But no. Actually, that's not a good idea. Like, it totally screwed around with all the filters and they sounded awful, and I didn't realize it until I was, a good chunk of the way through it. And I re-rendered everything out at 44, which is the way that I had basically composed it. Because say if you're working with white noise, it'll actually it'll produce a lot of great noise between 22 kilohertz and 24 kilohertz and 48 kilohertz, or sorry, not that high. No, up to 48, right? If you're working with 96, all the stuff you can't hear. So anyways, I'm just saying that, yeah, there's stuff when you're rendering it out that it's tricky because there's just so many variables, but it was really fun to work with too, so.
One thing that strikes me as really cool by nature of this kind of music is that if a scene is longer in the film than you anticipated, you can just say, okay, I'll just let it roll for another 15 seconds or however longer you made the scene. And you have the ability to deliver, you can scale your cue to any duration as long as the music still feels right for the scene. And that's obviously not something you can do in traditional film scoring. So that's a really cool flexibility that procedural audio brings to this medium. Yeah,
exactly. And I've also made it so that I can perform these pieces live. So I've got a leap motion, and then I use my hands. And so one interesting thing to do that I didn't do for the film is that I could possibly like perform it live to the video, or you could get even super tricky and you could actually have the actual video output, like you could do like motion sensing and all that kind of stuff with the video, and then make it so that those are the parameters that drive the music. So you could actually make it so like, oh, okay, totally hands off. Just feed it another, film, and then it could figure out, like if it's playing it's showing a whole bunch of like shots that aren't changing very quickly, then it could actually be smart and change the tempo and then slowly crossfade into a song that has a slower tempo, or maybe even draw the tempo down of the current song or thin out the mix. Those are all things that if I spent more time at it, that I could actually do with these scores.
What's the technology that incorporates video into pure data?
It's called GEM, so Graphics Environment for Multimedia.
Oh, gotcha. And it's jitter for Maximus P, isn't it?
That's right. Yep.
I just was curious if they use the same by proxy.
Yeah, I think that that jitter does some really sort of like smarter stuff, at least back in the day, and it also does more sort of matrix operations, like for the visual, whatever the processing. Whereas GEM is basically kind of like a wrapper on top of OpenGL, but because it's a wrapper on GL, that you can do really cool, like you can actually feed it shaders. Like if you've ever played around with Shader Toy, and you can do some amazing graphics with PD these days.
That's awesome. Can you incorporate PD with Resolume?
Yeah, probably. If it can communicate over OSC, like over Open Sound Control, then definitely you can, because that's how I communicate with Elite Motion, is that I do all OSC stuff.
Oh, OSC, great. Do you have to customize your OSC script to make that work, or is it right out of the box?
It's basically right at it's two things. Either like I use an app for Elite Motion called Gecko, and then that outputs the OSC messages for like twisting your hands or drawing it back or stuff.
And then do you pick those up like a MIDI learn kind of thing in PD?
Yeah, exactly. Then you have to do a bit of stuff within PD, but it's actually really easy because you basically just keep stripping off like the sort of hierarchical stuff within Open Sound Control. And so it's just basically like creating a hierarchy where you're just like, oh, here's left hand, here's left hand finger, this is like left hand finger twisting or whatever. And then eventually you can just drive a parameter from 0 to 1 within pure data from that.
I was using a Wii mote with Oscillator, I can't remember what their app was. And that was really
exactly.
Cool because I could control Maximus P music and kind of what I wanted to do was like conduct to make strings do things or make the tempo pick up, and it wasn't that accurate, but maybe it's better now. And plus, I might just be ham-fisting it, But it was super cool though from a thematic kind of standpoint where you've got a game controller playing game music like chiptune stuff. That'd be great if you set up a bunch of laptops all with a different section of your PD script that are in sync with each other, like one's handling the notes here and there, and you stand up on a podium with a Wiimote and conduct all those computers. That would be awesome.
Yeah, the Wiimote is really accurate, which is cool, and it's at this point it's really cheap too. So it just does stuff through Bluetooth. So yeah, that is cool. I find that just as far as expressivity, like because you can get really fine motor reactions with the Leap Motion, I really like using that, and it's also nice because you're basically, it's like the theremin. There's a certain performance element to it where you're holding your hands and it can be kind of entrancing because you're sort of moving your hands around. And like the shows I've done, one show specifically, and then I did another sort of just for a company, and like it, and people really just like, they're like, wow, you're doing something. Whereas if you're like on the laptop, like I know. It's a totally different experience, right?
So true.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I got dropped from the chat room. Are people still in there? Do we have any chatty questions?
It looks like it's been really quiet. I wonder if I got dropped as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
We've got to figure that out. Gosh, boy, I tell you, Leonard, I'm so sorry. Unfortunately, on your episode, we've had electricity go out. We've had our chat engine blowing up. This is unbelievable.
Yes. Sweet.
It's all the power of pure data. It's the interwebs doesn't want people to know about how awesome it is. They want you listening to your temp scores and struggling to sound like John Williams, and that's all there is.
Yeah.
That's it.
Hey, quick question. It looked like your patches were actually really vanilla. Are they?
Yes. Yeah, my patches are just
Man,
PD vanilla.
Oh, that's
That's
nice.
cool. That's really great. And then the next thing I thought was, have you ever thought about just throwing together a quick app using libpd and distributing a soundtrack as an app?
Oh, there you go.
You know, that's a funny thing about that.
Oh,
Yeah, no, we're actually planning an interactive version. So what I'm
that's
doing,
awesome.
yeah, so that's the reason why I built it all in vanilla, so that it'll be highly portable. And so, I mean, don't tell anybody, but I mean, like my idea.
Don't worry, both people watching this show won't say a thing.
Exactly. My idea is not only am I super stoked on putting out vinyl, but I want to do an interactive version so people can really kind of like similar to like like game audio scores, the interactive ones where they're meant to be sort of in that environment. Like it's one thing to sort of freeze them for that particular whatever, like put them out on Bandcamp, and that's cool. But yeah, I'd really like to be able to maybe put them out on like a Raspberry Pi 3 or something like that, or wrap them up into like an app or something like that, and then people can like listen to them for I don't know, like I do. Like I listen to some pieces for a long time. I just put stuff in the background, and it's kind of like like a little musical lava lamp sometimes. So
Nice. That's a great way.
Yeah, that is an idea. Yeah, and so that'll be coming out in a while. I'm not sure exactly when. Karen's, she's basically moving to other projects, and this is something that I can kind of do on my own. And so I want to basically do an education thing with this, and so I want to put some of the patch information out there so people can really learn and get their hands dirty with some of the patches, and get an sort of an educational bent on starting out with learning pure data, and then also generative audio and music, and see where it goes from there, and be able to play that stuff live out of a box.
Are there any other generative audio tools that you dig?
Gee whiz. Well, generative stuff. Gosh, that's a good question. I don't really know of any offhand. I mean, I kind of know proprietary ones, but I don't know of ones that are being used. I mean, obviously there was like Direct Music, and then like that Cohen one like years and years ago. But like, what is really happening these days within generative music as far as like an actual app or a program? I don't know.
Yeah, well, there's always little ones coming out. Nodal was one I was messing with for a while. I think my favorite is Notical, which is the Cohen one as it evolved. I guess they lost a lawsuit or something and lost rights to what it was originally called, so had to recreate everything, and that's now called Notical, Noatikl, I think it's called.
Oh, wow.
Really good one. But
Nice.
I mean, if you're going to, I like the fact that pure is in the name of pure data, because it really does teach you to get down to the nitty gritty, and that's where the education is,
Yeah, and because I teach students from around the world, is that I want to have the tools be accessible. So yeah, it's I think it's important to make it so that and then people can take it wherever they want to. So I like working with open source tools when I can, when I'm teaching people.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mike was saying something.
I wasn't, but I do have a question I could throw in.
Sorry, Mike.
But you did not interrupt me. Am I right in remembering that Pure Data was the same system that was used with Spore a couple of years ago? Because it looked familiar visually.
Yeah. So yeah, Spore used like a sort of a branch, I guess. So within EA, Brian Eno wanted to have EA PD exactly. They did a separate branch because it's open source, and if you talk to them, they had certain amount of success with it, but they also found that it was kind of like the consensus. The reason why it didn't go anywhere is they're kind of like it was sort of it was a bit of a wrestle to get everything working. Whereas like so, and it was more. It wasn't synthesis as far as I remember. It was just taking Eno's sort of little patches kind of thing, and then sort of doing stuff with them. And then I think he could use EAPD and basically change the behaviors that way. But as far as I know, it wasn't doing, say, synthesis. It was just sort of more like the control level data stuff.
Got it.
Yeah.
I will say though that Spore Creatures, which I got to put some music on that with Ian Stocker and I think it was Stephen Phalema. I use Nautical on the songs I put on that, and so those are generative. But then, like you say, you got to print them in the end, so they're generative only until the print. But made that way, I enjoyed it. But trying to keep up with Brian Eno is no small task.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was, it's definitely an inspiration, and the fact that Spore used it was really cool. So yeah, I've been enjoying using Pure Data since basically since it started, so like mid 90s. And the neat thing about Pure Data now is that there's the heavy crew. So those guys over in the UK, they're Ensign Audio, they're making a compiler for Pure Data, which is really neat. So it'll compile code patches from Pure Data, and then you can make WISE plugins or VSTs directly from Pure Data patches. It's very cool, and so there's a lot of companies that are also interested in using that technology too. So that's another reason why I'm using Vanilla, is because I want to be able to maybe take chunks of those, or maybe make them a little bit lighter, and then I could maybe even put them online, because it'll compile the JavaScript too.
Oh, I can't wait to get the record. I will spend that. 180 gram, please, if you don't mind.
Yes, it is going to be 180 gram. I haven't quite, I'm still talking to the pressing company, but yeah, it's a pretty big investment, but I would like to get it out there, and yes, it'll definitely be, DJ, like heavy vinyl. It'll be quality. And
you can increase the bass frequencies on 180 because it's not going to skip as easily.
Yeah. The other thing as well is that I got to be careful about not trying to add too much music, because you only get at most 20 minutes aside, and it's better to have 18 or less. So that'll also be a challenge for me too.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, guys, you got any other questions? I'm glad that we have recovered the show and we're able to continue. Thank you, Leonard, for sticking with us. Guys, you got anything else you want to before we part?
Wow.
This feels like a pretty good landing spot.
I think so. It's been fantastic having you on the show. Thank you for coming on. So sorry for the technical difficulties.
Yeah, no worries.
Will you come back though? Make it up to us, and we make it up to you, and have you back on the show, and just the next step, maybe dig in a little deeper on some Pure Data, maybe an educational kind of thing where we can put something together live.
Yeah, for sure. I'm used to doing presentations like that. That would be awesome. And then, then maybe we can even get questions from the community, and then just sort of have a little Pure Data, workshop-y kind of session.
That would be fantastic. That'd be fantastic.
Awesome.
Well, have a safe trip to Europe. We hope to see you at GDC this year. We met like 5 years ago, maybe even longer at GDC, just for a passing moment, as GDC does. So it's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to be on, and thanks so much. This has been awesome. It's super fun. Well,
you've been very kind, because you had to deal with a whole lot. We're not ordinarily this tough on the guests.
No, that's fine. No, I had a great time, and yeah, it'd be great to be able to come back too in the future. So thanks.
Love to have it. Well, thanks everybody for watching the show. Sorry about the break in the show. If you're watching this, then you figured out that the first half didn't go all the way through. So you have successfully traversed the game audio, whatever this thing is, obstacle course, how to watch two shows that got split up. And thank you again to Isotope for sponsoring the show. And this week is Game Sound Con. Everybody Twitter and let us know what's going on. Send pictures. I'd love to see what's going on. I'm not going to make it. Mike, are you going to be at GSC?
Yeah, I am. Registration opens in 12 hours, so getting ready to get a good night's sleep so I can get up at the crack of dawn and make it.
And then on Wednesday night, there is a get-together at Qbit at, anyway, check your events, your post-GSC events. There's something going on. Eventbrite is a very good app for that. And I'll see you guys there, because I'm going to AES. So Wednesday night is that for me, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday is AES for me. And Vince is just going to retire under some palm leaves and grapes in Florida or something. I don't know. What are you doing, Vince?
No, it's been actually kind of crazy at work. So no GSC for me, no AES. I will be hanging out over at Indiecade, which is just a few weeks from now. Actually 2 weeks from now.
You're doing a talk, aren't you?
I am. I'm actually hanging out with Nate Chambers and Rich Vreeland, doing a little game, music, and sound Q&A thing. So So that should be fun, but maybe we'll talk about that once Indiecade comes a little bit closer. That's still a few weeks away.
Makes sense. Well, with that, we'll say goodbye. Thanks, everybody, and see you later.